We got you updated. This is Radio Manzi News in English.
You are tuned to Radio Imanzi, broadcasting from Kigali. Here is the news in English, brought to you by Fiona Umuganwa. The headlines. First Lady Janet Kagame has urged the private sector and other partners to work together to support safe and affordable access to expert surgical treatment for all Africans. A Rwandan economist has been elected by the Board of Governors of the African Development Bank as the bank's new executive director, representing 9 Eastern African constituency. Sudanese women's activist Amira Osman Hamid has won a Frontline Defenders Award for Human Rights Defenders at Risk. Welcome back. News in detail. First Lady Janet Kagame has urged the private sector and other partners to work together to support safe and affordable access to expert surgical treatments for all Africans. She made the call during a fundraising gala dinner for the Research Institute Against Digestive Cancer Arcade Africa. The dinner, at which she was joined by renowned French surgeon Dr. Jacques Maresco, aimed at raising more resources for surgical research and development and a scholarship fund for gifted surgeons. The Arcade Africa is the first of its kind on the continent to be opened in Rwanda, with a commitment to advancing minimally invasive surgeries. First Lady Janet Kagame said no amount of money could reflect the value of a mother with chronic back pain regaining the ability to play with her child, or a father with heart disease being granted long enough life to see his grandchildren born and thriving. She commended Maresco, who is also the president of ARCAD, for his contribution to the health sector, as well as for making Rwanda a medical hub in Africa and for understanding the necessity of establishing a state-of-the-art medical hub in Africa. The Minister of Health, Dr. Daniel Ngamije, has called for sustained efforts towards fighting against the neglected tropical diseases in Rwanda and on the African continent. He was speaking during the 30 to 30 Leaders Cocktail Evening, an event that brought together influential leaders in sport, business, art and health to raise awareness of the neglected tropical diseases and talk about how using shared platforms can amplify awareness. NTDs are viral, parasitic and bacterial diseases that mainly affect the world's poorest people. The minister said that NTDs are a threat as they debilitate, cause stunting and impairment of cognitive development, as well as death among those affected. He said globally, over 1.2 billion people are affected by neglected tropical diseases. Africa is the most affected part of the globe, with almost 40% of the global NTD burden. The minister also talked about the success Rwanda has registered in its fight against NTDs, where, for example, between 2008 and 2020, the prevalence of intestinal worms in school-aged children from 66% to 41%. NTDs are entirely preventable and treatable, yet they cause long-term suffering to over 700 million people in Africa, meaning they affect more people than malaria and HIV/AIDS combined. A Rwandan economist has been elected by the Board of Governors of the African Development Bank as the bank's new executive director, representing 9 Eastern African constituency. Jonathan Zaikorira attributed his new appointment to the leadership of Rwanda and promised to give it his best representing the region, but specifically Rwanda at the Continental Financial Body.
I'm really happy. First of all, I'm grateful to the government of Rwanda, led by His Excellency Paul Kagame, President of the Republic of Rwanda, for having nominated as a candidate to represent the interests of the countries forming the constituency of Eastern Africa constituents. These are 9 countries. I will be representing them at the board of directors of the African Development Bank. Part of my focus is to push the interests of the bank, the countries I will be representing, in terms of advocating for more financing, knowledge and policy support, as well as pushing for more support to the private sector. I'm really grateful to the government of Rwanda for this trust. I understand it is a huge responsibility to push the interests of the countries I will be representing, and I promise to be doing my best so that my country and other countries I will be representing can really benefit from the African Development Bank. Currently, our country is benefiting from the African Development Bank. Ongoing portfolio consists of 25 projects in areas such as infrastructure. We have huge transmission line for electricity, which have been supported by the bank. We have key roads like Kivu Belt. We have roads like Basse Butaro. We have other projects in the water sector and human development sector, like Kigali Innovation Center, among others. These are projects, but I would say they are not enough. We need to push for more support to the private sector as we recover from COVID, and this will be my focus during my 3-year term as a body member representing my country.
Prior to his appointment, he was the senior advisor to the executive director for Eastern Africa constituency at the bank, a position he has held since 2019. The head of the National Malaria Control Program Division within the Rwanda Biomedical Center says that Rwanda is taking part in discussions with several countries and global malaria vaccine partners to see which countries are in need of the vaccine, the eligibility criteria, and vaccine access channels. In a groundbreaking development in October last year, the World Health Organization approved the widespread use of the RTSA's malaria vaccine among children in sub-Saharan Africa and in other regions with moderate to high malaria transmission. The World Health Organization's decision to recommend the vaccine was based on results from a pilot program carried out in Ghana, Kenya and Malawi that showed that the vaccine had good results after being used on more than 800,000 children since 2019. Dr. Aimable Mbituyumuremyi said the vaccine can play a role in fighting the disease alongside the already existing measures. He noted that when you look at the efficacy of the vaccine, you can't say it should be used alone. It does not come in to replace the measures in place, but rather should be used hand in hand with them to give more results. He also noted the fact that the vaccine is for children under the age of 5, saying it is something good since children are much affected by malaria in Rwanda. According to statistics of 2020-2021, about 40% of the people that were killed by malaria in Rwanda were children under the age of 5. In general, but the malaria epidemic has been waning recently in the country. In 2020-2021, the number of people who suffered from the disease were about 1,400,000 in the country, a significant decrease from the 2.5 million who suffered from it in 2019-2020. The first cohort of Rwandan Correctional Services inmate trainees have graduated with skills in vocational studies. 603 prisoners from Nyarugenge prison were awarded with various certificates. The inmates were equipped with skills in hairdressing, ICT, automobile mechanics, and tailoring. The initiative to have inmates have access to education began last year in February and has been executed through a partnership between the government of Rwanda and the Embassy of Netherlands. The Minister of Interior, Alfred Gasana, called upon the graduates to become job creators and not misuse the great opportunities and the country that believes in them. The initiative has been enrolled in 5 other prisons, including Rwamagana, Nyanza, Nyagatare, Huye, and Rubavu prisons, where inmates are said to access the training program at no cost.
Some items of international news on Radio Imanzi.
The African Union Extraordinary Humanitarian Summit began today in Equatorial Guinea, where around 20 heads of states made the trip to Malabo to attend the 2 meetings scheduled through Saturday. The first session, dedicated to the humanitarian crisis and a pledging conference, gathered African leaders, donors, as well as the UN Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator to raise funds. According to African Union Commission Chairperson Musa Faki Mahama, 113 million Africans need urgent humanitarian assistance this year, including 48 million refugees, asylum seekers, and internally displaced people. In a statement, the AU said 15 particularly hard-hit countries required urgent aid, with climate shocks and conflicts causing humanitarian needs to increase exponentially. The African Union serving chairperson and Senegalese President Macky Sall urged his counterparts to tackle the root causes of humanitarian crisis on the continent, reminding that prevention is better and easier than cure. He hinted at the second summit scheduled on Saturday that it will center on terrorism and unconstitutional government change, which caused population displacement and insecurity. Sudanese women's activist Amira Osman Hamed has won a Frontline Defenders Award for human rights defenders at risk. Ms. Hamed, an engineer in her 40s who has been a long-term activist for women's rights in Sudan, was first arrested in 2002 for wearing trousers and again in 2013 for refusing to cover her hair. At the time, a law prohibited women in Sudan from uncovering their hair or wearing trousers in public. According to her, this law, which turned Sudanese women from victims into criminals, was finally repealed in 2019 after the army removed President Omar al-Bashir. The NGO Frontline Defenders, which awarded the activist, said in a statement that she never turned away from her mission and continued to actively participate in peaceful demonstrations. Senegal's President Macky Sall has fired the health minister and announced 3 days of national mourning for the death of the 11 newborns who died in a hospital fire. The newborn babes died in a hospital fire blamed on electrical short circuit in Senegal's western city of Tiwani on Wednesday night. Pakistan's government has increased local fuel prices to meet a key condition set by the International Monetary Fund for reviving its bailout program. The finance minister said the Prime Minister's administration raised the cost of gasoline and diesel by 30 rupees a litre each. According to data compiled by Bloomberg, the resumption of the bailout will provide a much-needed relief to keep the nation's economy afloat and avert a default. The stocks have tumbled and the Pakistan rupee dropped 9% in the past month, the worst performer among Asian nations. The United States and Germany have signed an agreement to deepen cooperation on shifting from fossil fuels to renewable energy in an effort to rein in climate change. The deal will see the two countries work together to develop and deploy technologies that will speed up that clean energy transition, particularly in the areas of offshore wind power, zero emissions vehicles and hydrogen. The US and Germany pledge to also collaborate on promoting ambitious climate policies and energy security worldwide.
Economic news is a regular feature on Radio Imanzi.
Now, the Rwanda Stock Exchange Market Report. The trading session recorded a total turnover of 5,008,500 Rwandan francs worth of bonds traded in one deal on the fixed income market, while the equities market remained quiet. Bralirwa closed the counter at 160 Rwandan francs. Bank of Kigali at 260 Rwandan francs. I&M Bank at 43 Rwandan francs. Simirwa at 120 Rwandan francs, M10 Rwanda at 179, Equity Bank at 440, Kenya Commercial Bank at 370, National Media Group at 1,200, Uchumi Supermarket at 104, and RH Buffalo closed the counter at 526 Rwandan francs as the market closed. The currency market review of today. The Kenyan shilling buying price was 8.6 Rwandan francs and the selling price was 8.8 Rwandan francs. Tanzanian shilling buying price was 0.43 and the selling price was 0.44. Ugandan shilling buying price was 0.273 and the selling price was 0.278. Rwandan franc buying price was 0.49 and the selling price was 0.5. The US dollar buying price was 1,011 Rwandan francs and the selling price was 1,031. The British pound buying price was 1,279 and the selling price was 1,305. The euro buying price was 1,087 Rwandan francs and the selling price was 1,109 Rwandan francs. With that, we come to the end of tonight's edition with me, Umuganwa Fiona.